Hello and welcome. Today, we're journeying back to the early days of Israel, to a time when God was shaping a newly freed people into a holy nation. After their miraculous escape from Egypt, the Israelites were no longer slaves, but a people chosen by God, called to live in a way that set them apart from the world. To guide them, God gave them instructions through Moses, covering every aspect of their lives. Among these were the laws concerning what was clean and what was unclean, which we find mostly in the books of Leviticus and Numbers. Now at first glance, these laws can seem a bit strange to us today. They detail which animals could be eaten and which couldn't. They cover topics like skin diseases, bodily discharges, contact with the dead, and even the purification process after childbirth. But these weren't just arbitrary rules. They were designed to teach a profound spiritual truth. What was that truth? God was showing His people what it means to be holy. He is holy, and to be in a relationship with Him. His people needed to learn how to distinguish between what is holy and what is not. Imagine living in the wilderness with the tabernacle, the very dwelling place of God's presence, right in the center of your camp. God's perfect holiness was near, and the people needed to understand that approaching Him required reverence and purity. The laws of clean and unclean served as constant, tangible reminders that things like sin, decay, disease, and death are not part of God's perfect, life-giving design. They are consequences of a fallen world, separate from His holiness. Let's look at some examples. The dietary laws, which declared certain animals clean and others unclean, were about much more than just what was for dinner. They were about identity. By following these specific instructions, the Israelites were set apart from the surrounding nations who worshipped other gods and had different customs. Every single meal became a quiet declaration: we belong to the one true God. Then there were the laws dealing with sickness and disease. If someone contracted a condition that made them unclean, they had to live outside the community for a time. On one level, this was a practical public health measure, protecting the rest of the camp from contagion. But it also symbolized something much deeper. Being separated from the community mirrored how sin and brokenness separate us from God and from one another. It was a physical picture of a spiritual reality. But here's the beautiful part. These laws were not just about separation. They were also about restoration. God's mercy was woven into the entire system. Whenever someone became unclean, God always provided a clear path back to wholeness and community. There were specific cleansing rituals, sacrifices, and waiting periods. Once completed, the person could be welcomed back into the community and could once again worship at the tabernacle. The message was powerful and full of hope. Uncleanness was temporary. Restoration was always possible. God is a God who makes a way back. Through these daily practices, the Israelites learned to be mindful of holiness in every part of their lives. It wasn't just for priests in the tabernacle. It touched how they ate, how they managed their health, how they grieved their dead, and how they approached God in worship. Holiness was meant to permeate their entire existence. Centuries passed, and the deeper meaning of these ancient laws was made crystal clear with the arrival of Jesus Christ. When Jesus walked the earth, He did something radical. He deliberately touched people who were considered unclean by the society of His day. He reached out to lepers, He healed the sick, and He even touched the dead, bringing a young girl back to life. According to the old law, touching something unclean would make you unclean. But with Jesus, the opposite happened. His perfect holiness wasn't contaminated by their uncleanness. Instead, His holiness flowed out from Him, bringing healing, cleansing, and complete restoration to them. He didn't become unclean. He made them clean. Through His life and ministry, Jesus revealed the ultimate purpose behind those ancient laws. He taught that true uncleanness isn't about external things like what you eat or whether you have a skin condition. True defilement, He said, comes from within, from the human heart. Things like pride, greed, and hate are what truly separate us from God. And therefore, true cleansing couldn't come from a ritual or a sacrifice alone. The ultimate, lasting cleansing from sin would come through the grace and redemption that Jesus himself provided through his sacrifice on the cross. He is the final and perfect sacrifice that makes us truly clean before God. So, when we look back at the laws of clean and unclean, we see they were never just a list of requirements. They were a profound living parable. They were a lesson about the absolute holiness of God, a picture of humanity's deep need for cleansing from sin, and a beautiful foreshadowing of the complete redemption that God would one day provide for all who trust in him. These laws reminded God's people then, and they can still remind us today, that God calls us to live differently. He calls us to pursue holiness, not through external rules, but through a transformed heart. And most importantly, he invites us to trust him as the one who cleanses, restores, and makes all things new. Thanks for watching. If this video helped you understand this part of the Bible a little better, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more content like this. See you next time.